Welcome to another Mind, Body, Spirit panel, part of the Angels, Positivity, and Love show series. We have three amazing experts coming to us from across the globe with incredible insights and a lot of fun and sparkle. Um, you've seen them before in the APL show, or you will soon have seen them in 2025. I'd like to welcome Valerie Varan. She's coming to us from Florida, Dr. IYA WHITELEY from the UK, and Kevin Russell coming to us from California. Three amazing souls who are getting together today to share their wisdom with each other and with us. I'm super thankful. Valerie, IYA, Kevin, welcome to the panel.
Thank you. So grateful to be here.
Thank you, Michael.
I'll do a
Thank you.
light intro for each of you. Dr. IYA WHITELEY, she is a space aviation psychologist, but she's also here to help educate us, especially the young ones, about the interconnectedness of all and how it's all much simpler than we ever will realize through thinking. She guides us to our hearts, and she's got a lot of books and a lot of research. She's very scientific, but at the same time, super intuitive. So she's doing wondrous work for humanity. Kevin Russell's coming to us from California. Amazing transformational guide on a lot of fronts. Super learned is how I'll put it, from yoga to touch therapy and other stuff, consciousness, quantum healing as well. And that's also our guest in Florida. If you say quantum, it's her. She's a professional counselor, yes, and definitely certified, a lot of credentials and the rest, but she's highly intuitive too. And she's using what she's got. She's got a big heart and she's helping a lot of folks. So those are my intros for them. I'm going to start off a question that both hits an eternal question for mankind. It'll never go away. What is this all about? I'm borrowing from Ewan Brioch, the Welsh theater director in the UK, obviously, who's also a non-duality teacher with an amazing show series people should check out. I want to wish him a Merry Christmas as I reference him. So what is this all about? We're all on a unique journey. We're all doing a little bit of suffering and ebb and flow on our path. How can we get from here to here? And as you answer the big picture question, could you also reference how you actually help people get from here to here? So it's a little bit of an intro as well. Who would like to start off? First person to raise their hand. Kevin.
So my first answer is I like to boil things down. And so my first answer is, what's it all about? What is here for? We're here to experience all of the contrast and release resistance or attachment to all of the contrast.
Beautiful.
So
Now, how do you actually help people? What are your modalities? What are your
yeah.
favorite modalities?
So what I found after, to your intro, almost a lifetime of exploration, is the subconscious is really where a lot of the majority of the progress I've made has resided. So I help people unpack, the connectivity, the entanglement with trauma, with belief, with past experience, stress, and help them return to, it's really a reductive exercise, help them return to their natural state of peaceful presence, natural enlightenment, and all of the amazing, let's say, extrasensory tools that some people consider exotic, but that are our natural way of navigating three-dimensional space-time.
And last question before we jump to Valerie on this. If I say quantum, is it quantum field, quantum consciousness? How do you just fill in that phrase? And how do you describe our quantum existence? Kevin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was for Valerie.
No, we're going to Valerie next.
Yeah. So, everything is a scale representation of everything else. So we're in a fractal experience, like Russian nesting dolls. So on one level, we are human and we are complex and we are all the things. And in another level, we are just an excitation in the field. We're just a blip in an even bigger field than we can even perceive. And once we start aligning our lives with more universal principles, you can call it quantum consciousness, Christ consciousness, things tend to get a lot simpler. Flow tends to become a lot more of an easy experience. And we really step into that kind of Jedi, Neo in the Matrix type of relationship to our world.
Beautiful. Super wonderful. Valerie, what is this all about? And then also, how do you help people return to what they've already got?
Thanks, Kevin, for saying what you did, and Michael for even having us ponder that question, because what strikes me about why are we here is the simplicity is absolutely stunning, and we humans have complicated it all up. Because when I tap into my quantum, and I'll go there in a little bit, but for me, it's so amazing. And like, I'm just going to allow myself to do that right now. And so can viewers and anybody who wants to, right? But when we're just tapping in to this beautiful pool that brings with it so many incredible qualities that we each have. We're each like these unique snowflakes that are here, and we just bring so many wonderful mixtures of qualities, and we're each unique. And imagine if we all just stepped into that. We were fearless here. We just allowed ourselves to do that. We didn't criticize anyone else. We didn't judge anyone else. We just welcomed everybody else's sharing. Like, I just get stunningly excited and joyful to tears when I can imagine that kind of world, that kind of cooperation, the things that we could achieve here just amaze me. And yet, how do I help people? Because kind of like Kevin said, it's so mucked with debris. It's like we've gone into an asteroid field, and we can't see the forest for the trees. We're just so reactive to all of the criticisms and the judgments and the fears and the not belonging, because we all think we're so different and we don't fit in and what have you. Like, we've just so tumbled down that tunnel that the biggest way I help people, similarly to Kevin, is to recover that original self. Because even underneath childhood trauma, what I've usually found is we've lost who we are. And that is the very first experience that we have, that we point to about how we've lost who we are. But it's so simple to be us. And yet I've never met a client where that was simple. It just, even the concept of discussing it becomes so abstract for clients that we have to slow it way down. Just the abstract description of being, like if I just simply have someone want to hold stillness and say, just feel your beingness. They don't know what I'm talking about most of the time. And when we add quantum to that, I'm going to use quantum in two ways scientifically. One, it's the word we started using scientifically when we realized that energy came in quanta in certain packets. It wasn't like this continuous little watery stream. It was coming in little bundles or packets. And so they started using the word quanta for these, quantum particles and what have you. And the more they went down the quantum rabbit hole, the more they discovered that quantum now meant certain properties. And Kevin, I think, alluded to entanglement. So I'm just going to say superposition, entanglement, non-locality are probably the big three words. And I'm sure maybe we'll come back to that later unless you want me to dive deep. But it's just amazing how when we think of our quantum consciousness, it's one, it's interconnected, it's the part and the whole all at the same time, beyond time, non-locally. And when we can tap into that, it's amazing. And that's what I love clients to do. And especially those who are experiencers, spiritual experiencers, whatever that broad term of experiencing things that aren't having to do with this space-time, they actually need some of this quantum science, quantum language to help them understand how they're not crazy. So that was probably a really long answer to your question.
It was beautiful. Ia, you've got so many areas of expertise, and you're super scientific at one level, but you're super intuitive at another. And here you are kind of connecting how crickets, whales, and trees and all of us are interconnected, and that just sound is unifying. What is this, first of all, that we're in? And then how are you helping us to navigate it? And you get an extra addendum to the question. How are you helping humanity? Because you've gone big with your mission, really big.
Thank you. Very kind. I resonate with what Kevin was saying because I wish I could be that concise. I think I'm yet to travel that journey to be that poignant, to precision. And I like the way Valerie describes it in a much more flowy way and connecting, where you can almost travel with Valerie in the description, and that helps open up. I think that for me, it feels like an opening. Where we are, or planet Earth, as it's named, and I quite like that what doulas say. Doulas are the women who traditionally support women in birth to welcome babies. And the expression they say is that the baby arrived earth-side. And I think it's just so beautiful. And it has so much depth to that. And I'm sure a lot of them perceive this space. And I know some doulas who can see even a couple of light descending onto that space when there's a baby about being born. And in the US, you have this beautiful midwife that was not meant to be a midwife, but became a midwife. There's a book called, I think it's just called Midwifery, and it has amazing stories. There's hundreds of stories of women and couples coming to give birth in their space, in their farm. I think it's called the farm even. And everyone who enters that space, they have this spiritual experience. And as it was started in the 60s and 70s, they would compare to how they would feel this in psychedelics. But there will be only no psychedelics. There will be just the birth of the baby, and energy is, you wish, coming down or expanding, or maybe developing in that space in a stronger way. And people are more open to this wonderful kind of, it's somewhere where people start to wonder, and when they become curious, they have no preconceptions, because as soon as we start to conceive, or as soon as we begin to have expectations, this is where we're narrowing the field of our path, what could happen with us, what could happen to the world at large. And that's limiting beliefs, literally. And when people come to that space, they surrender. They surrender because men perhaps don't know what to do. Women also have to surrender to the physiology and the energy that is taking over. And they trust completely because they have no way of understanding the full process. And that surrender is, I wish, I could do as easily in the daily life, because that's what allows us to be full participants of the flow that is coming through each and one of us. So we are a big organism. I really like how Kevin said it, like we're, specks, or you used another term, but that was beautiful. So I could see when you were saying it, and I certainly feel like it's a big field, and it's not even 3D. We're limited in our conceptual network, or at least I am, perceptions. So it is a space, and it's beautiful to see that we are all coming in resonance, meaning that we understand that the clearer we are in our perception, in our thoughts, in our feelings, and the less preconceptions we have, the more we can usher into this new space that is available to all of us. So, in short, that's where we are. And what is my role, I guess, in this is allowing the knowledge to rise that's already exists. So I'm not offering anything new. In the sounds of nature has been here forever, probably maybe even before our type of energy that we are as humans here. And it's here for a reason. And some cultures and traditions do know about this, but it's not articulated as well. And it's also, even in traditions that live closer to the earth and nature, it's often given to, to a few people who support, or people come to if there is a challenge in that group, or in that tradition, or in that settlement. And now I feel it is more allowing for every human to tap into these sounds, because they are actually resonating to settle us in. So it's sort of like when you pour sugar, or when you take flour into a sieve and you shake it, and it kind of becomes very powdery and flowy. And these sounds, they resonate in such a degree that we can all settle into this letting go and surrendering, but not surrendering that we sit and do nothing, but surrendering into our gifts, into what we can offer, into what actually drives us from within, not being externally motivated, which has been a lot of my professional life, is looking how to motivate people. And this is where I found that you can't. You will motivate them to exhaustion and to depression and to suicide. But you cannot influence that until the person goes and do through this inner exploration. And that's what I do, is I help people to not go into outer space, but to go into inner space, despite my previous occupation being in space psychology. And I found that children who come here are a beautiful gift, and a beautiful reminder for us to remember who we are at the core, how we come here, and how much we forget and fall into what we have created conceptually. So it's up to us equally, because we have created this conceptual frameworks that we're in, is slowly to let that go, and let this new generation, through the generation of grandparents and parents, to start to open up and allow these children to follow their own curiosity, to follow their own flow, and stay in that, instead of go through what we had to do, fall into the matrix, if you wish, and then need to fall out of it.
Valerie.
I just wanted to respond to something that Ia was saying, because I loved the sifting analogy that you were giving. And the image that was coming to mind is the concept of entrainment, right? So here on this planet, in this space-time, everything is about waves. And when they are like swimming like dolphins, the peaks and the valleys are all lined up, they start having a mutual vibratory effect on one another. And of course, that would go with sound as well. Nature, all the sounds, the vibrations, the frequencies. And they start entraining one another, which means they start having a mutual vibratory effect on one another. So as you were describing all of that sifting, I was just really leaning into the entrainment, right? And how we're meant to entrain to nature, and the sounds and the energies and frequencies of nature as the larger organism. And yet there's, with all of our cell phones and our electronics, all of these things, and everything Kevin said, and everything we've been talking about with, we aren't who we are. We have all these thoughts, we have all these things, and it just keeps pulling us out of the wholeness that we would normally be entrained to. So no wonder we're even called to nature. But I just love that description of the sifting, and I I just had to share what was coming up because it was so beautiful.
Kevin, would you like to add something?
Yeah, along those lines, one of the quotes that I love that I share with people is from Nikola Tesla about understanding the mysteries of the universe. You need to understand everything is frequency, resonance, and vibration. Nature, plants, the planet, the solar system, our thoughts, our emotions, all resonate at an energetic frequency. And so from an inside out, I love how Ia phrased that. We create reality from the inside out. And so the thoughts, the emotions, the internal experiences are so important because there is frequency, vibration, and resonance to all of that, which then, just like ringing a bell or dropping a rock into a pond, then reverberates out into the world. And so it's, to Ia's point, the deep dive tends to get pretty deep once we come to this, entertaining the idea, let's say, not even a belief, but entertaining the idea that everything is that, which includes our thoughts. And it's like, wow, then the responsibility for what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm emoting into the world can only be mine, because nobody else is experiencing this particular hyper individual, to Valerie's point, system that I find myself in. I call it an earth suit, because this is the most technologically advanced BioWare in existence, perfectly attuned to this planet. But the survival mechanisms that have gotten us to this point have also been the shackles that keep us from really expanding beyond collectively. So when we expand individually, it's like a rising tide lifts all ships. So we start to resonate out at a different frequency that starts to be picked up by different people, and it's going to be off-putting for some that are in a certain could look at it as victimhood, blame, shame, guilt. Seeing someone resonating in a very present, very aligned, very embodied place could be off-putting. And then we get into a little bit of responsibility, where we are responsible for our own system. And when we are responsible for our own system, it enables other people to be able to be responsible for theirs, and then everything starts rising.
Speaking of frequency, we could all be or do a little more compassion daily. Good luck with that. But there are trillions of definitions of compassion. I'm going to provide one. But if you could talk about how compassion or kindness, gentleness, love, whatever you want to call it, plays a big part of all this, how it's being here. Here's one quote from the other side. Compassion is being kind to yourself and letting go of past failures and accomplishments in the now. Ia, how does compassion play a role in all of this?
Definitely, it is very clear from children, and that's where I turn in. I find that helping parents come into the intuitive space without worrying about, there are so much advice out there, and so many books, and it's very hard to tune in because it seems to be working for others and they're bestsellers, and it is very confusing to a mother, having done this myself, and wanting to know and offer the best to our children. What I come to understand and is that when we tune in and actually experience what we are offering to our children is what the universe is offering to us. And because we have this new capacity or new dimensions of love and connection that we couldn't have imagined before, what it feels like to cradle, a child, to protect and to give everything we have and can and didn't even imagine able to do. And then through that experience, to understand that the universe, which is, we are it too, is offering that to us. So we are the same, even probably, I don't know, thousands, millions, infinity capability of what is offered to us, that, that small particle that we can offer to our children. But at least if the person can fall into that, father, a mother, and maybe grandparents who haven't experienced that because of what they had to go through in their, daily material kind of life, and they come to it now, because I do have grandmothers on the courses as well. And they finally come to this recognition. And I find that then that compassion wakes up when you fall into recognition inside because when it is described to you, it's very hard to understand. You can recite it to somebody, and that's what we're taught in school. But until we experience it and feel like I can't, nobody can convince me otherwise. It is so true. It is such a true essence inside that I cannot, I don't even need to tell it to anyone, because it's so such a big component of where I am grounded or where I hold space, that there's no debate. And that's what I find, that children, if we watch them, how compassionate in just a dictionary description they are, we start finding other windows of what compassion is like, because through their eyes we remember ourselves, or at least there is a recognition that that feels right, there's no opposite, there's no duality anymore. There's no opposite to compassion when you're experiencing compassion. And allowing parents to land into that, and then they start to trust their feelings, and they no longer need to have somebody else's advice because they're lost, because we're looking for advice because we have no connection inside. But even when we do hear advice, we don't know if it's going to fit for us. And that comes back to that feeling of connectedness inside. And children allow us, because they're with us all the time. So that it's like, it's a retreat in the parenthood. And it's beautiful that we're gifted. I mean, I only come to this, not when my children were born, much later, but I'm glad I am. So I guess timing works here in the earth realm a certain way.
Heaven.
Yeah, you touched on a bunch of beautiful points. It's a lot of times I find in life and with the clients I work with, forgiveness and compassion are a lot easier and more attainable when we're externally focused, when we're accepting or forgiving someone else. And then you get through those layers, and then we get to the more of the core of the issue is, can I love and accept and have compassion for myself? And for so many of us, that tends to be the more challenging hill to climb. And so with every session, I end with, okay, for the next few days, remember, kind and gentle with yourself, always, ideally, but especially over the next few days as the work is settling. So when we can step into that space of acceptance and compassion for ourselves, it's a force multiplier for us to be able to move through life with more acceptance, more empathy, more understanding for others. Entering into that concept of Sonder, the understanding that every single human on this planet is living as complex and dynamic of a first person main character game in the world as we are. And someone mentioned, humanity and people. I've come up in both the creative and the research side of things. And one of the statistics I've come across that I love is the statistical chance of being born human in the universe is something like 1 in 400 trillion to 1 in 400 quadrillion. So it's astronomical. There's only 8.5, 9 billion, humans on the planet right now. So from those stats, everybody should be buying lotto tickets, because just being human, we've already won the universal lotto in some ways. So shifting perspective, Valerie mentioned forest for the trees, getting, using tools that we can utilize to get out of our immediate experience, pull back a little bit, see the lay of the land from a more objective perspective, as opposed to the subjective nature, hyper individual reality that most of us live, can be really expansive. And to Ia's point, it's so much easier when we can experience it after entering into that, maybe with story or allegory or being told, because it's one of those knowings where until you get there, it can be a challenge to comprehend sometimes. But getting into that liminal space, that internal, that creator space, the observer space, that's where so much can come to us. We might call it inspiration, divine intervention, inner knowing. And we can really start to unpack things so we can connect more with that self-compassion, that self-love, that self-care. And then everything gets a lot more simple. I love that you mentioned about adults and children. We're all just big kids. I mean, let's be honest. We're all pretending we're adults and we're doing responsible things, and we're participating in society, and we're kind of playing different roles. But at the same time, we're still those kids with wonderment and why, and just, marvel at where we find ourselves in the world. And so I feel like the more we can allow ourselves to get back to those qualities, those experiences, the more we are able to connect with that level of compassion and care for ourselves. So we can, the cliches are cliches for a reason. So we can really be that change that we want to experience more of.
Valerie, is compassion key?
Essential, really. I think I first am feeling called to differentiate the way I experience empathy from compassion, because a lot of times, even in psychology, it's used interchangeably. So probably with all of us here, we've heard terms like, oh, are you an empath? I'm an empath. And we could say empathy is the felt sense. It's like a clear sentience when we can actually feel another's energies in our own body. Medical intuitives do that when they're trying to, help people understand what might be going on for them medically. So empathy is the ability to feel it at a quantum non-local level. It's in our own body. We're feeling what they're feeling. Compassion, to me, is the mental counterpart of that. It's not necessarily emotional, physical, but it's the mental counterpart. And so to your question, Michael, no wonder it's essential, because most people aren't feeling at these deep levels. So no wonder that instructing people in loving kindness and in compassion, those are going to be terms that people can relate to more intellectually. And so when I'm having compassion, I'm thinking of the movie Avatar, which I just love. And when it's like, no, I see you, I hear you. There's this beautiful allowing of being, like complete unconditional allowing of who that person is in front of us. To me, that is the ultimate in compassion. And the reason it's also essential is because Kevin mentioned when we have a drop and we drop it in a calm pond and we send the ripples out in this space-time reality of frequency and energy. Well, notice that in compassion, if I see you, I hear you, I can only do that if I've done that for myself. So if I have seen myself, heard myself really allow my own being, and then I can share that like a ripple to others. And then to Kevin's metaphor, it can ripple out, ripple out, ripple out. So many of us are feeling lonely, disconnected, invisible, unseen, and unheard because we're usually surrounded by a humanity that is disconnected from the inner, disconnected from the self. They haven't had compassion for themselves, like Kevin constantly instructs. And so what is there to ripple? You need the first cause. And so it's basic to that core to see ourselves, allow ourselves, feel and sense our being, and then I can do that for everyone else. And for most of humanity, it does go in increasing circles. It's like first it might be a chore to do that with our immediate family, and then it might be a chore to do that with our friend circles or our community circles, and then our neighborhoods, and then our state. No wonder we have these team, us and them kind of mentalities, because anytime we see an I and a they, it just is showing us the boundary of our compassion and empathy, the boundary as to who is the self. And so if I'm like, my state is my team or my country is my team, I have put a boundary on my empathy, my compassion, and my ability to see that we are all one and interconnected. And once I become global, that's a start. Once I become cosmic, and it goes from there.
Ia, do you have anything you want to add or explore on the compassion front?
I just, at the moment, I'm just paused to listen. And so today I was discussing with a friend. It's about finding those spaces between thoughts. That is something that is very challenging in the modern kind of aspect of functioning in academia, for example, or in any business-like setting. And so you don't have literally a thought to yourself. You're like a horse, that have to perform to a particular cue and get to a particular winning position. And if you're not doing that, you certainly don't have the space in between to allow for that breath to come in even.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's so valuable, just that small awareness. Do we have space in between? Because any sound, music, we all of us understand some component of music. If you look at the notation of music, you can see there are pauses, and there will be no music if there is no pauses between notes. And we seem to be fallen into this mishmash of notes fallen on top of another, and we don't have a melody. And that's what nature allows for us to remind us. And because we're also made of the same material, like anything else on earth, it's yet another instrument or gift that is available at all times to us. And with technology now, it can be available from anywhere in the world. And that's quite beautiful that we have that accessibility. So I think it's time to kind of redirect our technological capacity, which I have involved, also creating, is to allow to benefit us instead of taking and being our theft of our attention and stilling our sleep, our serenity. And that's where I'm focused at the minute on how can we offer through technology for our new generation something that will tap into our inner curiosity rather than steal us away. So it's like time theft.
Before we go to the next question, Kevin, Valerie, did you have a remark or a response?
I actually love that Ia brought up the space between, because isn't that the object of all meditation, is to find the space between? And to me, the purpose behind that universal desire in meditation to find the space between is because only when we're in the space between can we be intuitive, right? Can we feel what's not in our head, but it's coming from somewhere else out in this cosmos and, whatever dimension it's coming from. Only when we have space can we allow intention, can we allow that kind of intuition to come in.
Kevin, did you have a final remark?
I call that finding the being in the doing. In life and in society and culture, everybody wants us to do, and there's very little space to be. And so when we can take it upon ourselves to find that space for ourselves, whether it's in the moment or if it's once a day, once a week, once a month, in whatever practice or capacity that is, we're getting more towards that, again, going back to that natural state of beingness, which is that presence. And that present moment, if you're thinking about anxiety, worrying about the future, depression, ruminating on the past, the beingness of that present moment is monumental. It's everything. And so the more that we are off our beingness, the more we're going to get entangled with the doing, and then we'll feel stressed, sick, depleted, run down, separate, all the things. So, and it's interesting that it's kind of juxtaposed with most of us are most uncomfortable in the space between, because our systems thrive on definition and compartmentalization and survival. And so it's really retraining and coming to the relationship with the mind body from a different perspective, or maybe a different approach than we have in the past, so that we can experience more of that space between with greater ease and less entanglement.
Beautiful. And Seth from the 1970s, Light Being, Peaceful Warrior, Dan Millman's movie or book, and also Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, all talk about it's not going to be found externally. It'll be found here through the world you thought you knew into a greater reality. I'm going to go back to being by doing, or doing by being, or doobie doobie doo. I'm going to plug the show and encourage people to subscribe, but let's do something a panel has never done before, panelists. If you want to do any breath exercises, take in a few breaths, exhale like a whale. I'm about to do one of those public service announcements so our panelists can recalibrate, getting ready for the next question, which is going to be, is love the fabric of the universe? There's a very poignant way you're going to answer this. So for the audience, this can be a very interactive just experience. If you watch the individual shows, the APL show, or when we highlight amazing guests on the APL Spotlight series, please subscribe, like, comment, share. Emojis count as comments. We've had, I don't know, 535,000 people visit the channel, but we get so few comments, and we're also getting crushed by running 3 shows a week by the algorithm. So your moves make a huge difference for Fred, Sarah, or John in Tokyo, Chicago, or Khartoum to see this broadcast, especially in the future. So thank you in advance for any steps you take. Okay, is love the fabric of the universe is the question being asked, but there's an asterisk, a catch. Of course there is. How do you know, and can you share an ebb or flow moment of your life where it was blatantly apparent during or way later as you look back? It could be anything from actually having an angel come down in human form and kind of remind you of something, save your butt with a flat tire or worse, or something else. And something that was transformative, I guess. You're going to share something personal, only if you wish. Who would like to go first? Kevin?
Yeah. So short answer to the first question, which my answer is yes. And how do I know? Through personal experience. I feel like that's really the only way we can truly know anything, is to experience it. And it's interesting. In retrospect, there were different signs along the way. And so one example would be, I was 18, dealing with some tumultuous times at home, not really feeling safe or secure in my space and in myself or in the world. And I'd gone surfing one afternoon, one evening, hiking back to the top of the cliff, and I looked back and it was one of the most brilliant sunsets I've ever seen. And just one of those, like, the most masterful painter couldn't even create some of the colors that I was seeing. And it was just this moment of pause, and this moment of just like taking in, just being stopped by the universe, by the beauty of the world and the sunset. And I heard in my mind, everything's going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. Wasn't quite sure where it came from, but it was this knowing. It was just, we call them truth bumps, where you get this full body like flush or chill of like knowledge of this deep capital T truth. And then the next one for me would be my enlightenment experience, my expansion experience I had a couple of years ago. And happy to dive into the details of it, but the main experience, the way I describe it, was like mainlining unconditional love, to the extent where my body was shaking and I was laughing, crying, because the physical form couldn't contain the energy I was experiencing. And then it was, so the analogy or the joke I share is at the end of Scarface, where Tony Montana, Al Pacino's character, he's got that mountain of China gold, or of Colombian gold on his desk. If that was unconditional love, that's what I felt like I did. I was just snorting this big mountain of unconditional love. And then the voice in my head changed. And what I heard, like 99.9% of what I would perceive as the voice I hear when I think or when I read something, was almost like connecting with a long lost twin. in the moment knew was always there, but had never been able to connect with before. And what I heard was, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you made it. We're going to have so much fun together. I was like, okay, that's new and interesting. And then it's just been a cavalcade and a cascade of different experiences in the same vein since.
I love that. Valerie.
Is love the fabric of the universe? So when I think of that question, to me, then there's the word love, and what does that mean? And there's the word fabric, and what does that mean? So for me, the answer is absolutely yes. And the reason is because love is the motivating fuel, if you will, that runs everything. And just like quantum science has discovered that we are all have a wave particle duality, we could say that love is that beautiful unity, that absolute allness and nothingness at the same time, the potentiality and the actuality. And the actuality is the fabric, and the potentiality is the wave, if you will, that quantum nature. And so here you have this beautiful love that is coming into creation, and it's bringing with it its unity, its qualities, and it's the allness. And so a practical example of that is I've noticed with me, with clients, love runs the show. So if anybody feels that all of a sudden they're having a lot of synchronicities in their life and they're talking about law of attraction or asking about law of attraction, I always like to point myself as well as them to it all starts with love. So for example, if I have love of a subject, love of a fascination, a wonder and awe, a love of a person, the intuition just comes in. If I have love of being of service to humanity, the love and the activity just comes in. And so one example, there's so many examples. A short one was after some recent caregiving years that I've been through, and I was trying to figure out, my private practice was in Denver, Colorado, and I'd come back to Florida for caregiving. And so the chapter ends, and I'm literally pondering with the universe, and I'm trying to ask, well, what do you want me to do next? And the answer that I essentially get is, we really need you to get people to start talking about their spiritual experiences. And what that really meant was their connected experiences, like Kevin just described. And where I am in Florida is pretty mainstream conservative on steroids. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, and how's that going to work from where I am? And I'm laughing and I'm kind of like talking about this out loud to a friend. And I was like, so what, do I start with the Catholic churches and the Methodist churches and then like end up with the Baptist churches or like what? And I'm laughing. The very next week, I have a Baptist preacher asking me about quantum physics in my front yard. And it's like, what? So it reminded me the first shall be last and the last shall be first, right? Anytime we put confines on the universe. The other really poignant, and it was over time, but it was a connected swirl of synchronous love, was I used to be in the environmental engineering field. So to Ia, I can relate when, your earth and interconnectedness and nature and what have you. And that's why I went into that field. And it was essentially the universe that was kicking my butt to go into psychology. And at the time I was saying, hell no, I won't go, because it was very Freudian and it was very Skinner behaviorism. And I'm like, I don't belong there. But the universe has its way with you, right? So fast forward, I'm 40, getting out of grad school, going to Colorado I'm like, well, at least it's more holistic there. I'll try there. And so there came a point when, I'm getting licensure, I'm working for other people. And there came the voice. It just was pestering me like crazy to go into private practice. And I'm yet again, I'm a late learner. I argued with the universe so much my entire life until I finally would obey and surrender. And later on, you learn, or, the sooner you do this, the easier it's going to go. But I was a late learner. So there it came. And I'm arguing because I'm like, no, my husband's in between jobs right now. My health insurance is on, where I'm working, not exactly the time to go into private practice for these many bazillion reasons. So there's the rational brain, the practical material, how do I eat and feed myself and get health insurance? And finally, I'm like, all right, I give up. I surrender. I'm going to do this, but by God, you better help me. And so it was January. I said, okay, end of March, I will go ahead. That will be my last day. I'll go in private practice. So now here comes the roller coaster. Talk about how do we know, like Kevin and Ia, like the experiences are off the chart when you're flowing with this kind of divine love of service and your purpose. And so on one hand, it was like, what? Oh my God, thank you, universe, because my husband gets this great job offer. He's going to be starting coincidentally like March 22nd. And I'm so thankful because it's just in time, right? You're like just in time. And then, and this also reminds me of the Buddhist cone of the maybe thing. Is it good? Is it bad? Yeah, I don't know. It's all twisted and inside and out because come the March, the day before he's about ready to start, I don't know why he ended up getting a colonoscopy, maybe because with my health insurance and his health insurance wouldn't kick in for 6 months or something. He decides to get a colonoscopy. Next thing I know, the doctor is throwing basically cancer pictures right in front of my face on my husband's table. And I'm, stunned. And my husband is like, and he's like, no, you've got to be in surgery and all this kind of stuff. Well, the job ended up the job essentially said to my husband, you can go ahead and stay. We'll wait for you, have this surgery, what have you. And so anyway, we start with that. And again, my health insurance is about to end in 10 days. And so all of a sudden, I get this call out of the blue from the director of our agency that I didn't even know very well. And she's like, Val, I heard what was happening. I'll find a way to keep you on the payroll. You can caregive your husband. You can do what you have to do. I'll find you things to do. And you can have, keep the health insurance through us. And I was like, oh my God, you saint. Thank you. And universe, thank you. Right. And so then she was giving me things to do. I'm trying to figure out this horrific situation. And at the same time, about the time she was like, Valerie, I don't think I can give you any more. So as of July 1st, I think that's going to be the end. And I said, and you realize July 1st is when his medical benefits kick in because the company had kept him. And I could go on. How do we know? Like Kevin and Ia said, the experiences are off the chart when you actually get engaged with the love that is the core of who you are. I can't do Michael's job or Kevin's or Ia's. I can only do mine, and that goes for every one of us. We need to be in our being, and then we become part of the fabric of this love, the unity of this love, and we truly become an interconnected, non-locally kind of fabric, and the dance of it is off the chart.
Yeah. How do you know love might be the fabric of the universe? And what's a personal experience that you know?
Well, we come in here through love. I mean, isn't that proof enough? It doesn't happen in the birth process if we do surrender. That actually true for everyone in the room, that it is an ecstatic, using human words to describe. It's something people never felt before. They feel they want to surrender and stay in that space. They want to bask and bathe in that, and yet there is this motivation to share that instantaneously. So when people experience that, they are driven, and they cannot hold themselves but share that onwards. And the same way we go. When we go, you see the delight when people have the space where they can melt into that space of leaving the body. And they come back sometimes to say what they see or how they feel. I do have friends who had their partner standing by their mother, and they were all, well, quite a few relatives in the room, and the husband was in the room, whom I know. And when the mother passed of his wife, everyone was expecting to be, to comfort the daughter. And she turned and she was beaming. She was beaming with smiles, with this extraordinary elation. And she just said that I've just been where my mom went. Mm. And it was so life-changing for everyone in the room, and for her husband and for herself. And so, and when you hold the baby in your arms, you just go somewhere else. You're not connected to the worry space that we've created here. And it seeps into this beautiful nectar of love in very different dimensions to what maybe even, kind of as I grew up, love is when you have a love at first sight of your partner, and love for your parents. But it's a very strong connection that it's almost, for a child, it's always been there. It feels like it will never get lost, and it's very different as we grow. That love develops other sides, and it's sort of like in a physical form, describe it as a diamond that has many facets, many depths, many dimensions. It reflects so many qualities of spectra of light within every facet. And it depends how we shine through it. And our experiences here are actually at every one point to find that love, and no matter what the experience is. And then the space transforms, like through, if we shine through the diamond, or, cut crystal, doesn't have to be a diamond. So any kind of, well, crystal is a beautiful analogy to put through that. And you can see how, even if it's lying in the dirt, it still produces these rainbows of all the spectra. And that's how the love is. You can possibly maybe even see white, but then all the colors of the rainbow come in, and then there's a double rainbow. And then they're dancing as soon as you move that crystal. And it's just like that. And it's so close and so simple. And yet we forget so much of it. And coming back to the breath, to that space in between, that is also our tool. We cannot live without breath. It's the spirit that's breathing kind of through us. And as soon as we can't, it's gone. And it's here, like literally every second. And how we breathe, we change our chemistry. And, just as Kevin said, this extraordinary earth suit that we have here that allows us so many gifts and potential that we have explored mechanically, but we don't understand the complexity, and certainly can't reconstruct it. We can put it apart, but what happens with us emotionally, spiritually, physically, what the body can do, we are still kind of collecting from ancient practices. And all of those practices, again, they come to the space of love and connection, of not self per se, but being connected to all, and having an understanding through these ancient practices in different cultures. When I was collecting tools for space journeys, I was looking for what kind of practices we can take on board the spacecraft, to go to the moon and Mars. And I wanted to see, because you cannot take all the spectra of all the pharmaceuticals. You can't. But what you can take, you can Eastern medicine. You can take Eastern medicine. You can take, traditional medicine. You can even grow plants, that you need for you to have. And of course, we have this fine-tuned, beautiful gift that we have. And breath is the simplest one.
Beautiful. Non-Sibi, and you reminded me of a great quote that I found. A jewel buried in earth 1,000,000 years is not discolored or harmed, and so a genuine heart can be brought out in anyone, anytime. And since it's Christmas time, and you can think of Christmas Carol, Scrooge, we all think he was the meanest guy at the start of the 79-page story, but we forget that he's the biggest joy bringer and still a great business person at the end. We'd all want to hang out with him. With that, does anyone want to offer a last comment reacting to any of the others? Valerie, do you have a quick comment?
I actually don't.
Kevin.
Yeah, no, with what he shared, that was beautifully stated, beautifully shared. No notes. Thank you for that. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Well, then you all are going on to the next stage, which is going to be a dual experience. I'm going to light sage. You're going to catch it in California, Florida, and the UK. But I'm going to pop the question now. And it's an easy question. It's a hard question. You can't answer love. Who are you? And you can't use a line that you've used recently. The opportunity here for growth and expansion for us all is, can you listen or feel as I blow the sage through two screens? Can you let the universe step in, your higher self or soul, or however you call it? Can you get something creative as a response? The whole point of this is go beyond what you know in this moment. So I'm going to light some sage. People who have never watched any of these shows before, I forget to do this sometimes. And then I've got about 5 or 6 guests out of 280 shows where we didn't do it. You can just catch sage. There's no limits. You knew it as a kid, maybe as an adult. We usually forgetting sort of the thing. So remembering right now to allow all of you to catch a little bit of sage. But if you want sage flowers and ocean, why not? Close your eyes, breathe more if you need extra help. And so here's the sage. If anybody wants Christmas, one of those fruit punch bowls, extra smells that have to do with Christmas, pine, Christmas tree. If you don't ask, you don't get. Allow, ask, and receive is what I'll add. Now, Kevin, I think you're going to nail this. First, did you get a little bit of sage or Christmas smell? Good. Who are you?
First thing that came in, I am it.
Okay. You're off the hook too. Valerie, are you getting a little bit of sage smoke in Florida?
A beautiful pine cinnamon mix.
Yay. Okay, and now who are you?
I am that which is eternal beyond time.
Okay. And one adjective to describe your energy when you're on. What's
Joy.
Joy? I love it. Ia, did you get the sage in the UK or something?
I got something sweet, something of the Christmas table, I think.
I love it.
That there is this Christmas cake that I don't know if it's a UK tradition, but it's a gorgeous cake that is done many months before that sits on the table. And then there's a beautiful crust on it. I'm salivating as I'm speaking. That almond crust on it that is absolutely gorgeous.
And Ia, you have a lot of depth and breadth. Who are you?
Well, I keep finding out that it's actually and I.
I love it. Next, if I can see a show of hands, the last person who puts their hand up is the one that is going to ask a question of one of the other guests or both. So last one to put your hand up. It's like being in second grade. So you're out. Valerie, you're asking a question of the other panelists. What do you want to ask?
Oh my goodness, so many things. I guess I would love to hear from Kevin what brought him towards the quantum, and I would love to hear from Ia about anything she found in the days of being a psychologist and the space program and the observer effect that we find, the overview effect that we find in astronauts.
Yeah, do you want to go first?
Okay. So overview effect is a beautiful way to describe what happens to us when we have this extra sensory, elating experiences that change our perspective to a degree where we cannot, it's a point of no return. In space, there is this also that point of no return when you can, there is a life before and there is a life after. And from that point of view, something drives you to ask more questions. You cannot sit still. You can't be, doing what you've been doing before. It's like a wake-up call. So, and to me, it feels like you don't have to go to space to have overview effect. You can have it anytime. You can have it, by children, touching you and looking into your eyes when you're crying, and they're really looking in like nobody ever looked into you, and you just melt and fall apart. And then you put yourself together with enormous joy. I think this is how we discover ourselves. And, astronauts and cosmonauts, they dream of space on Earth, but when they're in space, they dream of Earth. And, they dream of love and connection. And again, I think it comes back to that connectedness and, having the capacity to actually open up to that, because I think we don't realize the capacity for love and connection that we have. We feel that there is just, because we've been cramping, not, well, kind of, it's like constriction, when you have a tube and then you pinch it, it's all of our body is pinched like that. And in many traditions, like in North American, South American, and so sort of east of Russia, there are a lot of practices that talk about soul journeying and also capacity to, it's called soul retrieval. And sort of coming to your second question, Valerie, about clinical psychology, I feel like from my clinical psychology training, I found that we're looking at trauma, and these are all kind of soul pieces that were lost that we are then helping the person to find. But I just found that, traditions that are grounded in, more presence and connectedness with the earth, and they have saved the traditions, they do this much more efficiently because it's done through love and connection. And that depth where the person is sitting with the person, not trying to treat them, but trying to sit in that pain, in that connection, in that trauma, and something from that connection and feeling together into that space that, that pinching releases, and sometimes it's so difficult to feel with that expansion. And that's how I feel we feel that expansion when we release and some of our worries and disconnect, if you wish.
Oh, yeah, I love that description that you gave, and it made me feel like you said, when Western psychology is so clinical, meaning medical, observer, detached, disconnected, the portrayal in the movies is always like you just want to cringe. And yet the way you described it from a quantum perspective, it feels like what's actually happening is, right, when we, in the way you just described, when we connect, when we are there, we are connecting with a person, we're placing our consciousness there, and our being, and at the level, like Kevin points out, and at the quantum level, but also at the level of energies and what have you, we are in training and resonating with them. And I believe that there's something at that energetic level when we really tune in and we're really listening, it's happening at a physics level. And no wonder it's so healing, because the person can automatically start feeling connection in a way that they probably have never felt before, just because you have this beautiful, loving person who really is allowing themselves to connect that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there is something that I come to, will come into space, into our family. And my husband mentioned this to me before. If you have a chance, listen to telepathy tapes. If you have not come across it, it's about literally a generation that has been grown up, locked up inside, and they have so much love to offer that I wish everyone, I don't want to even say anything more, because with every episode, our pragmatic mind, those who are still opening like myself, stepping through that and, have to always remember the pause in between to reconnect and breathe with this other space that is available within us and always present within us. But these children and adults have the capacity, and they talk about what we've been only discovering through kind of a second and third person, because not all, a lot of us had the experiences like Kevin, right? And also near-death experiences that people come back and talk about this love and connection and holding space for them. And any other, experiences, extraordinary experiences that people have, that either bring them to looking for connection and love and explanation, or those who are very elating right at the beginning. And so I just wish for all of us to tap into that space, because it's almost like this, I don't even have to describe, this plast, like a dimension of people have been waiting for us to wake up, literally. And it's just beautiful.
And Valerie, you had a question for Kevin. Kevin, do you need the question again, or you're all set to get going?
No, I'm good. Yeah. No, and I love that what Ia shared, because it really was a similar experience of there was a before and then there was an after, and different things along the way were really creating different Satori experiences, those sparks, those micro enlightenments, those aha moments. But the big catalyst was actually our daughter. So kind of bringing it full circle, coming back to the kids. Both my wife and I, who's a brilliant practitioner in her own right, she's got her background in psychology. My background's in design, which there's a lot of psychology in the science and art of design. And so we knew enough to be dangerous, so to speak. And so we would say, we're not arguing, we're just disagreeing semantically, or we're just mixing participles, or we're not arguing, we're just disagreeing. And we were fighting. Underneath these guises of propriety, and it started to express in our daughter, and she started to get symptomatic in the sense that she would scratch or pick or itch any blemish that she felt. It looked like she had chicken pox, because she had all these little red marks all over. And at the time, this is around 2015, 2016, we were still externally focused. Oh, something is going on with our daughter, so we need to get her help. And just as Valerie has shared and Ia's touched on, the universe doesn't make mistakes. And so we were at the perfect place where one of my wife's really good friends was working with a Western doctor who also practiced a form of subconscious intervention, subconscious inquiry, called Touch for Health. And a friend had broken her back in a hiking accident. Surgery did not even solve the pain. She worked with this doctor, came to the connection that the pain now was not because of anything physical, but because of the role that she had found herself in her relationship. So she was able to release the energy that had been building up around that, come into more of her own within the relationship, and the pain disappeared. So we're hopeful. We take our daughter to the doctor, and whether she was closer to her source because of her age or whatever, all it took was 1 7-minute conversation. I don't even think there was a muscle test. And the answer she connected with was, when mom and dad fight, I get anxious, and this is what I do. And that's all it took for her to never do that, never trigger that behavior again, just connecting the dots. So then my wife was with our daughter at the appointment. And so he said to our daughter, sweetie, can you please wait in the waiting room? I just want to talk to your mom for a sec. So he said, she's fine. You two need to do the work. And that's real. And it was just, getting on that bowl and saying yes and being ready. And then it was just an unyielding, unrelenting march for me for the next 3 years or so of learning the tools of transformation, practicing them daily, not letting myself get away with all the things that the justifications, the blame, the low feeling about myself. And it was just about 3 years after that I had this massive reconnection, massive breakthrough that just really allowed everything to fall into place that I'd been interested in and intrigued by, which included quantum physics, quantum theory, thermodynamics, electromagnetism, all the different elements of our reality that are very impactful and effective, and we can really work at that level. But without awareness, it's very hard to do anything. And so that was really our daughter was the catalyst for kind of launching in this direction. Yeah.
That was a beautiful story. We're going to plug Kelly, your wife, Kelly Russell. She's a guest on the show, airing January 3rd, 2025. That's episode 164. She was kind enough to think of you for this panel, so we have her to thank for you being here. I've got a quote for everybody that could tie this together. We're going to do a couple interactive steps intermixed as you keep sharing with us all. But here's one more of those quotes that I dug up from whenever. I've unfortunately forgotten who did it. When we look into our own hearts and begin to discover what is confused and what is brilliant, what is bitter and what is sweet, it isn't just ourselves we're discovering, it's the universe. Everything and everyone is awake. With that, we're going to do a little bit of light. We're going to go beyond words just for a moment. You're going to be able to see light on a cardboard background cutout. We did this before the show. We know it works. It's just lights everywhere. Everything's got consciousness or vibration or frequency, whatever you want to call it. Blue sky is number one to see this on your own hands. And you can see it with your loving partner or your pooch. You can see their light coming off of them. You can see how you interact. You just have to do a little less thinking. So with that, I have a holiday dad joke for everyone. You've all heard this one before, but Santa's reindeer, Blitzen, Dancer, just those two. Why do they drink so much coffee? Because they're Santa's Starbucks. And if you can laugh, you're letting go. That's all there is to this. It's like yawning, falling asleep at night, brushing your teeth, taking a shower. I'm going to put this up, move my hands around. You'll see a filament of light between my fingers. But the opportunity is for each of you to ask for a little extra, not just visually. You did this before the show. You got a little extra light, perhaps. And if you didn't, now's the time to allow. If you could ask for a new topic or a new insight you didn't have before, because we're going to go to each of you after this and share something. So this is sort of like those secret Santas where you get something from someone else, but this will be the universe stepping in. Here's my light. One more dad joke. What's the only flower found on the human face? Tulips. And if you're yawning, you're letting go. Perfect. It's an angel yawn. You don't have to cover it. Tulips, but someone just said iris for the flower found on the human face as well. So there's not just one answer. And I think that's almost a point of today. Caesar Milan is what I was reminded of from Kevin's last story. It's about the parents of the dogs, not the dogs. What are you seeing between my fingers, Valerie? And can you ask for extra from the universe and just give us a thumbs up, or you can actually say what you're seeing.
I am seeing right now actually mostly gold, and as you go down, it's the purpley pink.
Perfect. And Ia, what are you getting between my fingers?
I see white, it's actually spiraling now, which wasn't doing before. Yeah, just I can see white around your fingers as well as between.
Beautiful. And I've been seeing Valerie's aura on her every time she talks. We'll get Kevin back hopefully in a second. If not, we'll be closing out the panel and we're okay either way on this. What else, if you don't mind closing your eyes for 1 second, you might get something on your eyelids. You might just be taking a breath. But if you could clear the decks, and anybody at home that needs extra help, rub your hands together in a circle. Don't make a fire. You can rub your hands in a circle for 3 seconds to reset the deck or clear the deck. And then what are you getting, Valerie, for a quick insight that you didn't have 30 seconds ago?
It's an insight about sacred geometry and the point to a line, but I think that's about all I can say about it.
That's okay. Ia, what did you get or what are you getting coming in that you did not have a minute ago?
Well, I suddenly started hearing the rain, which apparently had been going on for a while. Um, but I now hear it with wind, and wind always fascinated me. It's so if we come to a tree and we try to push it, we can't, but the wind can break it, and yet we can't see it, we can't touch it, and that's quite a beautiful way. I mean, the wind transfers, all the pollen, all the seeds. It clears the deck, as you say. It's part of transferring life and connecting places and renewing, refreshing. Some of it could be feel devastating, but I love the sound of the wind, which you cannot hear unless it interacts with something around us.
Oh, beautiful. And for Kevin, I've got a special quote for you. I will put this up one more time for 1 second, and I have a homework assignment for the other two. I'll get to that in 1 second. Here's the quote. I've been sitting on this since 1992 when I first moved to New York City. I didn't have a diary. It wasn't quite like that, but I wrote these quotes down, and I did not know what non-duality was for another 16 years. I wasn't smart enough to call someone up or do my own research. Okay. Whatever the yogin sees is his instruction, and realization that all he sees is unborn. That is the most excellent guru. Innocence is the way to realize non-duality, for here the effects of virtue and vice are one. Siddha Katrapa. And I'm going to do this one more time, get a little extra, but if you don't mind sharing either what you're seeing, but ask for an insight from the universe to come in. And what are you getting between my fingers?
I got it the previous time, and it's similar now. Fractals and facets.
Yay. Again, you're invited back on the show. Okay. If you don't mind closing your eyes, or you've already got it, what was it that was delivered?
It's that bleeding edge of creation, that bleeding edge of reality. So from a quantum standpoint, everything everywhere all at once, everything that we perceive as past is happening concurrently at a different dimension that we can perceive, because we're here to have these human experiences with somewhat limited faculty. But it's that staying out of, we've touched on it a few times as far as different states of being. There is flow or there is restriction. There is love or there is disconnection from love. And so when we stay in this open, in the moment, aware, present, non-attached, as opposed to detached place, it allows us to see that oneness beyond the veil of duality, beyond the veil of separation. So that's my takeaway from that quote, and that innocence of that moment. I think it was Socrates, the oracle of Delphi, who is the wisest man in Athens. Well, you are. Well, I know nothing. And that the middle way, the maybe from that the allegory. They all point to everything from antiquity and indigenous practices really points to that place of beingness and that place of observation.
And I'll put up one photo of one angel. 'Tis the season. Her name is Joy. If you've watched any of the shows, you've probably seen her before. But if you could at least get a private reminder on something, get a compliment, get good vibes, ask for a hug, feel what you can feel, don't judge. But also a closing topic for each of you, something to bring up, a reminder on what you already knew. Here's Joy. People can put their hands out like she's a fireplace, or you can use your whole body to feel the warmth, joy, sparkle, tingle. And I'm going to quickly check. Valerie, what are you feeling from a photograph of an angel? She'll move. She'll change colors. You can see pink confetti in the room around you, or sparkles or glitter. You won't have to vacuum later. No mean notes from anybody at home.
I just felt it was almost like a huge energy just enter my face area, and And it's almost like I see changing shapes because I was seeing like a long hair, almost in interesting ways, like a Native American vibe, but now she's like turning in the other direction than she was. And she has just this other beautiful feminine energy that's just different. I can't even describe it more than that.
Beautiful. And she's got a high peppy voice, 28-year-old. Hey, if anybody wants to do extra listening, Ia, what are you getting? It could be just advice or a reminder for us all. What would you like to share? You've turned into a professional psychic medium, and we know that's how you bill yourself.
And for me, it's still about pause.
And Kevin, what are you feeling, getting, receiving? What's the transmission?
Yeah, mine came through as the feeling. It was similar to Valerie, an upwelling, like a rising. And then a lot of what I get tends to be like pop culture things, just because of my upbringing. And so what I got was there's a scene in Fight Club where he sees a spirit animal. It's this emperor penguin. The penguin says slide, and then just goes and jumps down the slide. So slide.
Oh, I like that. That was really
Love
fun.
that.
Okay, 'tis the season, it's the holidays. We all do a lot of thinking, but how can we walk a smoother path? What's your final bit of advice for us all to just breathe more, show love always, and allow? Ia.
Yes, breathe. Discover what the breath has to offer. I have come across, breathworks, breath techniques in pretty much everything I've done before. And now coming more consciously into that, and I'm discovering how simple, but also how absolutely expanding that is, and how it unpinges those twists that we have created. So the more we breathe and focus on that, or if it is very challenging, sometimes Christmas could be challenging for people because they meet people maybe they're not ready for, or the situations, or maybe they experience so much joy, they lose their breath as well. It's almost step back for a moment and attune to your breath. So it's almost like changing perspective without an overview effect. You can physically even take a step if you can. And that gives you space to then focus on your body. And if the person is in front of you, it's definitely, removing from confrontation or discomfort, or understanding that you need a pause for whatever reason. And just taking in the breath and see what happens. And just, stay in that. Don't run away. Don't confront. Don't, give that pause, but take it through a breath.
Oh, I love it. Valerie.
The quote, "Be still and know that I am God," is what came to me. And I think it dovetails certainly from what keeps coming to Ia, and certainly relates to things that Kevin has said. And I feel like probably a beautiful summary statement of, things that I've talked about today, because be still. We're doing so much doing, as Kevin was talking about. We're escaping the obvious. And so as soon as we be still and pause, then we can know that I am one with what we call God, or absolute, or oneness and love, because the knowing comes in, but this be still and know is the imperative. And so at a Christmas season, you've brought up the Christmas season, right? The Christmas season is supposed to be that reminder season for us to, that on top of everything, love is the most important thing. We are all attempting to step into Christ consciousness, which actually is divine love, unconditional love consciousness. And as we are still and embrace the love that we are, we will just all beam with that love. And then, like Kevin pointed out, with ripples, it will radiate out. It will affect all of us, all of humanity. And every thought we have, as he was talking about, there's an inner sound and a vibration that starts at a hyperdimensional level. And it comes in then as thought and comes in as word. And we're sending those things, but when we can be still and know, and through the feeling of that love radiate out, it's even more powerful.
Now, Valerie almost did the final question as we close out. And so we'll come to her last on this, but I'm going to put up a couple photographs that I hope represent unconditional love, consciousness, Christ consciousness. It's the same object being photographed in just a different time of day. I'll tell you what it is after I show the second one. Feel what you can feel. Don't judge. Breathe extra. You're going to get whooshed with cosmic love, or we're going to blame angels. Don't blame Canada. We'll blame joy, men, archangels, blah, 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 even a fairy for a lot of love. So I'll whoosh you in a second, but you're going to leave us with a mantra that you're going to say 3 times out loud. You're going to feel something from it, and so will the audience. I feel like Valerie's closing just now. She almost gave us a mantra, be still and know, but you can't use that one, Valerie. You're going to have to come up with a new one. Here's the same photograph, different time of the day. It's a glass hummingbird feeder that was hand-blown glass. Again, feel what you can feel. That set the table. I'm just going to put my hand up. You can use your body to feel what you feel and just see if you can feel from Texas a little bit of warmth or sparkle. I'm checking out. This is really angels in the universe stepping in. And then I'm going to ping pong paddle whoosh you all once. Just nod when you get a little extra vibe on your front, your back, in the room. If you want to go crazy, ask for snowflake sparkles everywhere. Again, you won't have to snow shovel at all later. Catch a little holiday cheer or even music in the air. What will you allow for? Valerie, did you get something in Florida?
It was definitely an interesting sound that I can't describe.
That's good enough. And in the UK, Ia, did you get something?
Yeah, I've got like a light blanket, that cascading blanket.
Beautiful. Kevin, I'm buying time for everybody. They've got to come up with that mantra. They're going to say it 3 times, and then they're going to leave us with profound, beyond words awareness. Kevin, what did you get in California?
It's all of a sudden the bird song out our window just started going crazy. It was just like almost like they were in the room.
So I think we're pointing to what we've been pointing to the whole time. There's something more going on. I'm getting fried. Oh my God. Than words. And yet you all are masters of description, sharing, and caring. So thank you for what you've done during this panel. Ia, what is your mantra? You've been picked to go first. 3 times out loud. You're leaving us with infinite love and your personal awareness. And thank you for doing this in advance. What's your mantra?
Step back, pause, and breathe. Yeah. 3 times.
No, you can take the breaths for us. We're in your breath right now. How about 2 or 3 breaths, if that's okay? We're really enjoying your breaths.
Yeah.
Ooh, and so yeah, you got a hall pass. That's a first, and I love it. Okay, Valerie, now you're on the hook. You can't use what you got before. What's your mantra or reminder for us all?
Be beingness.
I've never heard that. I love it. Be beingness, but you still have to say it one more time. And if you don't mind doing some sort of mudra with it as well, make it up, kumbaya, anything, and flow. You got a lot of flow. And I've been seeing your aura the whole panel.
Be beingness itself. Be beingness itself. Be beingness itself.
Wunderbar. Okay, Kevin, what do you got for us?
So this is playing back and forth between breath work and connecting with love. To disrupt is divine. So disrupt the thought, disrupt the anger, disrupt the blame, disrupt the self doubt, disrupt the negative self-talk, negative self-thoughts. One of the best ways we can do that is through breath work. And there we are delivered once again to love. So disrupt, disrupt, disrupt what no longer serves you.
And I'll add a little play off that. Let go of what you know. I think you've all brought us a touch of that today. I want to thank you for being on the panel. If you all are interested, we'll do this again at some point in the future. I had a wonderful time. Thank you so much, Valerie, Ia, Kevin in California. You're amazing. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and Happy New Year first. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having us. Thanks, Ia. Thanks, Kevin, for joining us all together.
Yeah, with
Thank you all.
gratitude.
It was beautiful. Thank you all.
Thank you.